back, YouTube. Episode 5 of Impertinent Insights. We're getting into episode 5 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. And thank you to Disney Plus again for making this episode only a handful of pages for us to chew on. So, should be easy enough. Ian, you want to take her away?
Where to begin? I suppose we should just start from the beginning, shouldn't we?
That would be handy, yeah.
So, we start off with Grover and Annabeth standing around in all kinds of chaos with police and paramedics after the terrorist attack by Percy Jackson blowing a big old hole in the arch. The Fates then appear to Annabeth, snip a thread. This was supposed to be in the first chapter of the book. They moved it to the middle. Who knows? Who cares? It's a whole thing. Doesn't come to fruition for several years. For anyone that wants to pick up the books, I will not spoil that, but keep in mind, Annabeth describes it as someone's going to die, it's going to be soon, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't come to fruition until 4 years later. So, shortly after this, we find out that, again, they think that Percy and the gang have destroyed a train, have now blown a hole in the arch, and they're being looked for by law enforcement. So what a great place to stand, just in the middle of a bunch of police and everyone running around. Yeah, first responders everywhere, and we know that we're wanted fugitives, so let's just stand there. So Grover and Annabeth decide to go look for Percy, and surprise, surprise, they come across him as soon as he gets out of the water. He's soaking wet, by the way, not completely dry as he's supposed to be. Now, in the book, he just kind of runs through the crowd, makes his way through, trying to find his friends whom he finally stumbles upon. Again, here, they find him as soon as he gets out of the water. And then for some reason, Grover is his best friend. The best friend he's ever had, probably the only friend he's ever made. They've known each other for quite some time now. Yet Annabeth is the one who, up until this point, has shown nothing but disdain for the boy, runs up and gives him a hug. Just, again, not great writing, not great characterization. And then we get more whiny, oh, my daddy saved me. He saved me. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And then they decide to make their way out of the city, and Nathan has some wonderful points on their miles-long trek to get out of St. Louis. Keep in mind, again, they are wanted fugitives.
All right, so the St. Louis Arch is where they are depicted, and the very next scene, they are out in countryside, rural, open field area. No buildings, no skyline in the distance, at least from the perspectives we see. And now when you look at this on the map, assuming they are not completely inept and are continuing in a westward direction, that's a lot of city to get through, for one. They're 12-year-olds, so they're not, hoofing it. Their casual walk is going to take them at least 10 hours. I would argue 12 to cross dozens of miles of city and get out into the open country outside of St. Louis. And it's summer, but they're not drenched in sweat. They don't seem tired. It's just like somebody picked them up in a helicopter and plopped them in the middle of the countryside and was like, all right, keep walking now. That's the point. It's like they don't show the hardships of this journey across the country at all in this show. We don't see it. But then, yeah, we have a vehicle approach from the rear. Turns out to be a motorcycle. They hide until they poke their heads up and say, hey, there's a guy that's kind of hinting at who he is. Realize pretty quickly it's Ares. And we'll get into why it's annoying that they didn't immediately know when they looked at him. But then, yeah, he offers them food and a proposition of sorts to help them out and takes them all into a diner. And I know, Ian, this is your favorite scene. I am going to let you start this one off until you're tired of talking about it.
Oh, yeah? You're going to let me do that? You're such a great person, Nathan. So, one point, I just want to step back real quick to while they are on the road ducking from Ares. This is where Annabeth reveals that she saw the Fates. And keep in mind, Percy... well, he's straight up shown that he is well versed in the Greek myths. Yet, when Annabeth mentions the Fates appearing to her and snipping the string, he just goes, oh, is that bad? Is that a bad thing? Should we be worried? And this gets more frustrating as the episodes go on, because he knows the big popular myths, he knows the obscure ones, yet...
selectively.
But anyway, yeah, so we get to the diner. This would be a fantastic spot to showcase just some godly powers, some godly auras. Because in the book, when Ares shows up to the diner and he walks in, everyone stands up and stands at attention because God of War walks in and he's a god. He's got power. He's got an aura to him. And then he waves his hand dismissively and everyone just kind of confusingly goes back to what they were doing. He also has a cool interaction in the books with the waitress where he just shows utter contempt for mortals and again showcases more godly powers. He just waves his hand. The lady turns around, goes and gets food. He gives her gold and she's like, this isn't money. And he pulls out his knife and essentially threatens her with it. And she's like, okay, yeah, this is good. I'll take it. In the show, obviously, they trek more miles to Ares, who on the road tells them, Zeus sent out his children to look for the bolt as well. So they head off to the diner where Ares reveals to be a Twitter troll, God of War, sparking little internet spats with random people. They could have done something cool with this, like have him spread propaganda to try and just get populaces angry, start wars or something that way, or at least cause some sort of chaos. But no, he's just, I love Twitter because I can make people argue. Weak, stupid, lazy, awful.
Give me a second. I'm just starting to fight on Twitter here. Nothing makes me happier than a good old-fashioned burn it down fight. Huh. Okay, done.
We also have Annabeth just talking mad shit to the God of War, chirping him like no tomorrow. And then at one point, very aggressively and snarkily to Ares, is like, well, what are you doing here at this diner? Why aren't you looking out for the Master Bolt? He literally told you what he's doing. He was already out looking for the Master Bolt. He came across you guys. He's offering you some help. What do you mean, what's he doing there? Again, more lazy, annoying writing to make Annabeth something she shouldn't be and something she is generally not, and until the show decides that she needs to ramp up the aggressiveness. So he tells him about the shield, and that's it. He just says, my shield's at a water park. I need you to go and fetch it. I'll help you out with your quest if you do so. But for some reason, I need Grover to stay back as collateral. What is any of this? Oh, and then Grover said, no, it's fine, guys, go. I know what I'm doing. What are you doing? What's your plan here? Why do you have a plan? How can there be any plan aside from sit there, don't piss off the god, and don't get killed? Lazy, poor writing.
And there's also the whole point of them meeting Ares at a diner was they've been on the road for a while and they're probably starving. And the scene shows just a pile of cheeseburgers and French fries. Anyone's favorite thing on a long road trip. And they walk in, they sit down, and they disrespect the God of War quite a bit. And then they leave. They don't touch it.
Right.
They don't even pick up a French fry.
No. But yeah, so Annabeth and Percy, they make their way to the theme park, the amusement park. Nathan, please take her away.
There's not any background given as to what Ares was doing, what this place is. All it is go get the shield. In the book, there's a few more details given, and I'll get to that in a second. But when they show up to the amusement park, there's, turnstiles and entrance, the little spinny gates. And Percy tries to walk through one, and down comes this, spinning, chewing blade system. And he stops, obviously worried. Annabeth just immediately calls it out as celestial bronze for one thing. Doesn't look like it. She's like, just like your sword's made of, but... Oh,
the glowing bronze sword? It's made out... Okay.
All okay. Right. It looks like any other random, steel, iron, aluminum, something. But yeah, so Annabeth is just calling out some exposition. And then just because it's celestial bronze, she makes the comment that this place must be built by a god.
Stop! In the mechanism there. That's celestial bronze. Oh, right now. Celestial bronze is what your sword is made of. If you're a human, it'll pass right through you. If you're a monster, demigod.
Well, what's it doing there?
That's a great question. Safe to say, this is not just some amusement park. A god built this. kind of...
Granted, they left this part out of the story, but demigods can work with celestial bronze as well. And in fact, a lot of Cyclops do, as you learn later on. Like, this is not just a godly material. It is a...
Right.
Of the gods, but plenty of other beings are messing with it. In a moment of clairvoyance, she kind of like looks at it and studies the trap mechanism and is just like, you should try to keep going through there. And so he does, and it just kind of like comes down, comes back up, and then she goes through and it does the same thing. It's not dangerous. It's just meant to scare you. It's a test of what?
Yeah, it's a test. It's meant to scare us.
That was added, but to be clear, this was not in the book.
Nope.
They just wrote this in as some, I don't know, maybe finally make Annabeth look like she's smart or studious or, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the reason was.
I do want to say, in the book, all three of them head to the water park, but Grover then they can't figure out how to get in. So Grover uses his shoes and flies on over and then, you know, pops a gate and they get in.
Once they get in, they realize it's a test. It was not scary after all. Okay, whatever. Back to the diner. And we have Ares back on his troll phone. I don't know why this bothers me, but he's just like an unnatural, unrealistic way of typing on a phone. And no matter how you want to argue this, there's nothing on a cell phone that you need to type like this at this frequency.
Yeah.
I don't know what. Whatever.
Yeah. So, here Grover tells Ares that he knows him. He's met or seen him before during, they just say, the solstice. Grover lets him know that he's seen him on Olympus before and knows who he is. Let's go back 5-10 minutes when Ares shows up on the bike. And Annabeth, with little information, is like, that's Ares. Grover has met Ares before. You would think he would very quickly recognize the god of war and just be like, hey guys, this is Ares. Also, presumably, Annabeth was also there during the solstice. She would also have seen Ares. You would think that no hints need given. You would think that just immediately like, oh, that's Ares, guys. Keep your wits about you. Gotta make Annabeth figure it out, even though 2 out of the 3 kids know exactly who this is.
We also gotta, I'm just gonna briefly mention the odd certain kind of tension, maybe one-sided, but there's a certain chemistry in this scene that, while well acted, is just odd.
Your deep cuts.
Those are wars where hardly anyone died.
I like your mellower stuff. There's something cool about overwhelming force and a quick surrender.
No one talks about those anymore.
They should.
So tell me where we met again.
Yeah, I will give the show props here. Not in the books at all, but between the 2 actors, their back and forth is delivered well, and you kind of get lost in it. You're like, where's this going? What's he doing? Upon like thinking about it just a little bit more, like it's all dumb and doesn't make a whole lot of sense, much like most of the writing in this show.
So, speaking of that, so we go from one why and what's happening to another why and what's happening, back to Percy and Annabeth in the amusement park, theme park, where these rides are, if you've ever seen a street fair or like a county fair even, thrown up in a weekend or a few days kind of roller coasters and such. They're walking through there saying something along the lines of, tell me the god of craftsmen didn't build all this.
Yeah.
And they're like rusted old clown car looking,
Yeah.
just not great. Not great. This is not like a permanent setup.
Even if they were new and pristine, they're not impressive or groundbreaking or anything. Again, as Nathan said, looks like it was thrown up in a weekend, looks like a temporary street fair.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Tell me the god of craftsmen didn't build this. You ever seen anything like this?
If it belongs to the god of craftsmen, what was the god of war doing?
This is not the Top Thrill Dragster. This is podunk clown costume on a, I don't know how to describe this, but it's not great.
No, it's not
stupid
impressive.
scene.
God of Craftsmen. Okay.
Nope. Silly time right there. And then, yeah, they pull out of their butts the fact of Ares was there on a date.
If it belongs to the god of craftsmen, what was the god of war doing here? Aren't they enemies? And why'd he split without his shield?
If I'm guessing, Ares has always had a thing with
Aphrodite. She's Hephaestus' wife. Oh, you're kidding.
So, with no clues, no hints, nothing, just if I had to guess, he was here with Aphrodite. In the context of the show, what would make a little bit more sense would be, why won't the god of war just go back to this defunct park to get a shield? Nope, nothing that makes sense, just, oh, he was here with Aphrodite.
Yeah, because in the book, we get Ares explains he was on a certain ride doing a certain thing. Like, he doesn't mention with who, but he's like, I was on a date and I left my shield there. Don't worry about it. Go get it. And then by inferring and realizing who's all involved, they finally reach the conclusion that it had to have been Aphrodite. So far, this whole episode is just off the rails, spinning its tires.
Yeah. And then they come across the thrill ride of love. And they're just like, that's where it's at. How do you just, oh, there it is. Because in the book, like, the shield's just sitting out in the open. And they're like, cool, it's here.
And then a trap ensues.
Yeah, and then a trap ensues, which, according to Reardon, was a production nightmare, even though it would have been infinitely cooler. They just come across a tunnel of love, and they see Ares' shield sitting down there. So, right before Percy and Annabeth go down in there, this is when they put together that it was built by a god. Annabeth notices a Greek symbol on one of the Cupid statues that surround this big pool. And she mentions something like, oh, it's an H, so Hephaestus. All right, cool. So they go down in there, Grover stays up top, just in case. As soon as they grab the shield, Cupid statues all turn and start shooting their arrows over and create a net over it to trap them inside. Obviously, this was meant for Ares and Aphrodite. And then you later find out that the Cupids are cameras and that they are broadcasting on something called Olympus TV, obviously so that all the gods can see them be caught and humiliated. During this scene, a bunch of little mechanical spiders also spill out, obviously to fuck with them. This is when we learn about Annabeth's crippling arachnophobia. So Percy, without having any options, is like, all right, this is a pool, let's do something. So he feels that little tug in his gut, and then he just floods the pool and the ride itself with water, taking out the little spider automatons, and all right, cool, that problem solved. Now let's use my water powers again to steer the boat and keep it from smashing, keep it from capsizing. They then mute through the tunnel of love. The gates closed. The other boats from the ride are just kind of mashing up against it. Annabeth, we get to see her think quickly. Percy suggests we jump, and Annabeth's like, that's a good idea on my mark, because Percy's an idiot. As it smashes into the gate, they leap. Plan works out. As you can probably deduce by yourself, book did it better, and it was way more exciting.
Right, just like this previous episode, they took the perfectly exciting and fun, quick-paced story moment and they twisted some elements and then had to go back and fill in, like the part where let's pull Grover out and stick him with Ares, and oh, now we got to think of something else. Or possibly it was, what was the whole thing about the spiders were a production nightmare, so maybe they were like, well, we'll give Grover a cool moment with Ares over here. Either way, it was just a dumb hodgepodge of let's change story elements. Oh no, we need to adapt it to make sense, and it still barely does.
Instead, in the show, they hop into a boat on the thrill ride of love, which it's clearly dead, it's clearly defunct. Why is this full of water and operating?
Yeah, artificial water currents are exemption. Yeah, it just kind of cuts into it. So it could be argued that off-screen Percy used his powers to some degree.
Which would track, because up until, every time something cool is supposed to happen, let's cut away.
Because they just end up in the boat and it's flowing.
Yeah, and it's flowing, and then we get the stupid light show that comes out of nowhere, which depicts Hephaestus's backstory.
Yeah, then we have I don't think there's anything of note in this conversation, but they then go down there's the thrill of the ride. They go through some like cavernous thing.
Now, it's not super tame. Like, Yeah, they go down the cavern, but like it's pretty wild, you know? Like some steep drops, like I mean, this ride would kill people. I think if you're gonna have them put together that it's built by a god and built by Hephaestus, it should probably be right around in here, not just inexplicably walking through this shitty park going, the god of craftsmen built this.
Nonsense.
Give them some hints, give them some clues, let them put it together. Don't have them go, I read the book.
Yeah. Speaking of hints, after they just flew down this, whatever you want to call that cavernous like water slide, they come down to some calmer waters, and they see like a boat ahead of them fall off into another waterfall. And for some reason, I guess you could argue that they want to get to that shield, so they don't want to be a part of that slide. But they're like in fear for their lives. Get out of the boat!
Yeah.
Rather than, again, Percy just kind of like waiting and like pulling the boat over to the docking shore thing. But
I was going to say exactly that. This is a great part to showcase Percy being able to control currents and just move a boat effortlessly. You could have had him just move on over.
It set it up so like Percy's reaching out for Annabeth, and there's like a quick bubbling moment. You're like, oh, do we get to see it? And then it like really starts to bubble up and form, and then cut to black. It's just such a like if you're gonna cut to black, just have them jump in the water, cut to black, they're out of the water. Oh my goodness, how did it happen?
Yeah. Oh, and then right when they're out of the water, Annabeth, who before he was revealed as the son of Poseidon, basically knew he was the son of Poseidon, has also seen him use his water powers before. Yet she's all bewildered and confused that he used his water powers to get them out of the water.
He's wet again, by the way.
And he's wet again when he's not supposed to be.
And she's oddly dry.
She is quite dry. Or at least compared to Percy. Like, you can barely tell that she's wet.
And
we're not touching any more on that. Moving on.
When so they see this shield up high, and they're like, oh, we're not gonna be able to just climb and get that. No way we can find a pole to try to smack it down.
Yeah, so let's not even try.
No, but before they even start to speculate on that, we get back to the diner and the odd Grover Ares dynamic, which again, well acted. Once you get a handle on what exactly is going on, it's Grover is manipulating the god of war somehow to giving information that doesn't even really lead to anything, but in the show they depict it as, aha, got him. He didn't reveal anything besides, like, you know, the obvious, like, I hate my sister and my family is about to fight, and I like fights because that's what I'm all about. But Grover is kind of amping Ares up. I believe the show has not touched on it at all, is Grover's an empath. So what you can surmise here is that they're trying to give Grover like a badass scene where he's useful, I guess. When he had one of those already with flying around the water park. He uses some kind of manipulatable, I call it his Black Widow moment, because that's exactly how Black Widow was doing stuff with like Loki and I can't remember, a couple others, where she was just like, thank you for your cooperation. That's kind of what he's doing there. And the whole time, again, it's just a weird energy with those two.
Was she always like that?
Who?
Your sister, Athena.
What do you mean?
Always making things more complicated than they need to be so people will think she's smarter than you.
Thank you. I can't be the only one who's...
Just a weird energy given off by Grover. But it's fine. He's 23, 24. Even though in Satyr years, that might as well be 13.
I mean, but if he has any knowledge of gods, he knows that they don't have many limits. Degenerates.
Yeah, true. I mean, yeah, if you know anything about mythology and the ancient Greeks, they got up to some stuff. Not all of it was
kosher.
Funny.
Then we jump back into the water park scene with the shield, and Annabeth and Percy are trying to figure out how to get it. And there's a chair, and here we go. Percy showing off his Greek knowledge, his mythological knowledge of some obscure myth that I didn't even bother to look up if it's real or not, as far as mythologically real. But there's a chair, and you gotta sit in it, and it traps you, and then they get what they want, which is the shield that's like 15 feet in the air. For the second time, Percy wants to sacrifice himself.
You were right. I can't believe it, but the fates were right. There's no getting around this. We dodged at the arch, barely. Maybe this isn't something you can dodge forever,
The Oracle chose you. The gods chose
Stop.
you.
It isn't about that.
What could it possibly be about if it isn't about that?
You're better at this than me. Believe me, I wish there was another way this quest succeeds. I just don't see it.
Yeah, Percy just readily, so many things. So one, they don't even bother to try and like tug on the shield to see if they can get it out. They don't try and climb. Percy's got a magic sword. Like, let's not even attempt to see if we can lop the hands off of this statue and just take the shield with us. Like, nope. First and only thought is let's set off the trap. Annabeth, 7 steps ahead of everyone. Most formidable demigod at camp. Just great idea.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and plop down on that thing and get the shield.
It's the only option.
The only option. There's no other way.
They also use this scene as a moment of like Annabeth and Percy having a moment of sorts, and it's just,
Yeah.
oh, their relationship is bipolar and unhealthy, as depicted in the show.
Yeah, as depicted in the show. In the books, it's a steady little ramp up into friendship.
Yes, in the same scene when we're giving them a moment, Percy, as he's been told in the show at least, the pen will always show up back to you unless you surrender it. And what does he do? He surrenders it because he's going to sacrifice it. Okay.
Before trying anything else, let's go ahead and trap ourselves in the trap. And then, after Percy turns into gold, we get to meet Hephaestus for some reason. Now, keep in mind, this is...
You would have never guessed it's Hephaestus.
But yeah, he comes out. He looks like how Chiron would look. He just looks like as Nathan said during some of our discussions, like a watchmaker or something to that effect. Like someone that just does like not some big beast that's hammering out, godly metals and making giant robots. Nope, just some scrawny little beard mustache wax man dressed in tweed and glasses. Not the big hulking beast he's supposed to be. Again, just more bad casting, just more bad character design. He's not a threat. Who cares?
They gave him a line that specifically says something along the lines of, I'm not one to be trifled with, essentially. You don't look too scary, but if you say so, guy.
I'm not one to be trifled with, but then Annabeth goes into 30 seconds of whiny little, oh, you're supposed to be better. Oh, the gods are so mean. And he's like, you're right. Let me free your friend.
And then walks back into his residence. I don't know, inside
Yeah. Why are you there? Do you live there? Are you maintaining this place? If you are maintaining it, why does it look like shit?
I mean, yeah, he does look like a handyman of sorts.
He looks like the guy that can design something, but then you tell him to go put it together, and he's like, I can't do that. Like, I'm the brains behind it.
Hephaestus is supposed to be both.
Yeah, exactly. He's supposed to be this big, ugly, hulking,
genius,
repulsive thing that's just brilliant and builds giant automatons. This guy looks like if you asked him to build a grandfather clock, he'd cry. Now they arrive back at the diner with Ares' shield.
Yeah, don't they just like chuck it on the table for him?
Yep. They come back, bang, here you go. And then upon watching it back, this is supposed to be Ares' shield. It's got the boar head on it and all that. It's supposed to be heavy. When they plop it down on the table, it's made out of rubber. Like it flops. It's at 15 million per episode.
And also, I mean, just to hammer that one home, this 12-year-old little Annabeth hoists that up with like one effortless arm.
Yeah. Here's your rubber shield, Lord Ares.
Styrofoam.
So yeah, I mean, I don't even want to rehash like what happens in the book, but like the book did it better. It was exciting.
The same amount of story they covered in this episode was covered in the like chapter and a half from the book, but it was faster paced, quicker, and yeah, exciting. It had you paying attention. This is just, it's so bad. It's so bad.
So bad. In the show, in episode 2, we just straight up get told Percy's mom's still alive. In the book, Percy's like, all right, now tell me about my mom. And he just goes, she ain't dead, kid. Whoa, she's not dead. Again, your mind explodes, all kinds of like, oh, this literally changes everything.
The whole Sally reveal was slow over the whole story where obviously as a reader, she dies in a flash. She allegedly dies in a flash. So you're like, something weird there, but let's continue. And then obviously Percy's sad. So you're like, she might actually be. And then he starts thinking about ways to retrieve her from the underworld. So that's kind of your train of thought. Is like my mind immediately went to the Hercules cartoon where he pulls Meg out of the underworld. So I was like, that's That's got to be the plan. Then yeah, we hit this Ares scene. You're like, okay, so she's really not. That flash of light was something weird.
Yeah, she's not dead at all. Sick. But Ares is like, all right, here's your transport. Boom. It's a tractor trailer, which it was in the book. But he then hands them, a backpack with fresh clothes, some money, some drachma. In the show, same thing, but he mentions here's fresh clothes. Why do they need fresh clothes? They don't sweat, they don't get tired, they're never hungry. Like, this is a very leisurely trip, traveling across the entirety of the United States. And they're handling it so gracefully. But in the show, Percy gets all up in Ares' face and he says, you better stop messing with me. Like, you don't know who I am, but if you keep it up, I'm going to show you who I am. If I were Ares, I'm killing that boy right then and there. Insolence to the gods means absolutely nothing, as we see even later in the show.
That's because the show has made these gods to be just like
people, just normal humans.
There's no aura to them. There's none of that like crackling power that you feel coming off of them. Like, they're supposed to be like dangerous just in their presence. You're like, ooh, that's. But yeah, Ares is one where Percy pushes that for sure, because Ares, again, his aura just makes you want to fight, but not to that extent.
No. Now, you could make the argument that, in the book, all of that stuff is presented through Percy's inner dialogue.
I don't want to hear it. Yeah, that would not be hard to portray in just plain acting. I mean, look,
literally have them say it.
The way you and I this whole time are like going back and forth from calmly explaining to just like up in the, you just every so many lines he just sits forward a little more and just starts getting a little more aggressive in his words, and then Grover's like, dude, no.
Yeah.
So it would not have been hard.
No, wouldn't have been hard. But I mean, for these writers putting in some thought and effort to collect their paycheck, why would you do that? And then we get end of the episode. They get in the trailer. Harry snaps his fingers. Doors close. I think I know who stole the Master Bolt from Grover. That's the mystery, and that's the mild tension that you finally set up in the show. Turns out to be wrong anyway. But to be fair, in the book, they do eventually suspect this person that's named in the next episode. They don't pull it out of nowhere. But yeah, so I mean, that about covers this episode. I mean, we definitely missed some book details and some stuff to complain about, but I think overall that gives you guys plenty enough to chew on.
Yeah,
so
this episode was a quick glance over part of the book, so that's kind of the way we're treating it in the show, is it just shouldn't be this in depth.
Shouldn't be this bad. But I mean, this is where it really starts to shoot downhill. The 3 episodes prior to this, it was like, we're getting a little rocky, but I mean, just this entire episode was borderline rage-inducing and a very big letdown.
Yeah, and anyone who was like left over, who wasn't like already committed to hating it the way we were and just watching it casually, the last of them that I've heard of ended up quitting on the next episode, because this one clearly alienated people, and they're like, all right, we'll see if they pull it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, next episode.
Spoiler alert, they do not. But look forward to our thoughts, feelings, and our impertinent insights on the next episode. Go ahead. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it. Leave us some comments so we can discuss a little bit further about what you didn't like. Let us know what we got wrong. Let us know what we got right. But until then, thanks guys. We'll see you on the next one.
Good shit.